Hello there, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Tonight, we're drifting into Derry, a place where children go missing, where every few decades something wakes up, where the adults forget, but the fear never really leaves. Settle in. Let everything else fade. Some facts will surprise you. Others will drift by like autumn leaves. If this helps you rest, a quiet like helps others find us. But for now, relax. Let's begin. Derry rests in central Maine, a town of 30,000 souls built along the Kenduskeag River, where the water flows dark and cold through neighborhoods that seem unchanged since the Victorian era. The town was founded in 1715, though the land itself carries older stories. Whispers from times before settlers arrived with their dreams of timber and industry. From above, Derry appears unremarkable, another dot on the map of New England, with its downtown of brick buildings, residential streets lined with maples and oaks, and the sprawling industrial section that once drove the local economy. But beneath this ordinary surface, patterns emerge for those who care to look. The town's geography creates natural divisions, neighborhoods separated by the river, by the railroad tracks, by the canal that cuts through the heart of downtown. These divisions have shaped Derry's character across the centuries, creating pockets of community that rarely mix, boundaries both visible and invisible, that residents navigate without conscious thought. The Kenduskeag River winds through Derry like a central artery, its waters carrying the weight of the town's history from the northern wilderness down through the barrens and into the heart of downtown. In spring, the Kenduskeag swells with snowmelt, sometimes flooding the low-lying areas, a reminder that nature cannot be entirely tamed despite human efforts. The river's name comes from the native peoples who lived here before colonization, though their stories have been largely forgotten, erased by time and deliberate forgetting. Along its banks, children have played for generations, building forts in summer, skating on frozen stretches in winter. The river provides a constant soundtrack to Derry, its murmur audible in quiet moments, a presence both comforting and somehow watchful. Local fishermen know its moods, its deep pools and shallow runs, the places where fish gather and the stretches where the current runs strange. The Kenduskeag has witnessed everything that has happened in Derry, carrying secrets in its flow, though the water never speaks. The barrens spread across 100 acres of wild land in the very center of town, an undeveloped tangle of vegetation, streams, and hidden spaces that has somehow remained untamed despite Derry's growth around it. Dense with scrub pine, sumac, and thorny underbrush, the barrens create a maze of trails known primarily to children, those young enough to still find adventure in exploring places adults have forgotten or choose to ignore. The ground is uneven, marked by small ravines and seasonal streams that feed into the Kenduskeag. In some areas, the earth is marshy, holding water in pools that reflect the sky like fragments of mirror scattered through the wilderness. The barrens have always belonged to Derry's children, a territory beyond adult supervision, where imaginative games could unfold without interruption. Here, clubhouses have been built and abandoned across decades, secret meeting places constructed from scavenged wood and youthful determination. The area carries a particular quality of light filtering through leaves, creating patterns of sun and shadow that shift throughout the day. Even in the heart of summer, parts of the barrens remain cool and slightly damp, carrying the scent of earth and growing things. Downtown Derry presents itself in Victorian brick and stone. Buildings constructed during the lumber boom of the late 1800s, when the town prospered from the forests that once covered central Maine. Canal Street runs through the center, its name referring to the waterway that was engineered to help move timber, a testament to human ambition to reshape landscape for profit. The architecture speaks of a time when Derry expected greatness, when civic pride demanded substantial construction, buildings meant to last centuries. Many of these structures still stand, housing shops on street level with apartments above, their facades largely unchanged, though the businesses have cycled through countless incarnations. The Derry Public Library occupies one such building, a structure of particular dignity, with its stone lions guarding the entrance, its high windows letting in northern light. Inside, the library maintains the atmosphere of an earlier era, with dark wood shelves reaching toward ornate ceilings, reading rooms that invite quiet contemplation, and a collection that includes not just books, but newspapers dating back to the town's founding. The building smells of old paper, wood polish, and the accumulated knowledge of generations. The standpipe rises above the western edge of town, a Victorian water tower of red brick standing 190 feet tall, its architecture both functional and oddly beautiful in the way of 19th century industrial design. Built in 1884 to provide water pressure for the growing town, the standpipe represents an era when infrastructure was constructed with both utility and aesthetic consideration. Its circular interior contains a massive tank, and a wrought iron staircase spirals up the inside wall, leading to a small observation platform at the top. For years, the standpipe served its purpose, a visible landmark from much of Derry, a symbol of progress and civic achievement. But the structure carries darker associations as well, events from past cycles that have made it a place of unease despite its Victorian elegance. Children growing up in Derry learn to regard the standpipe with mixed feelings, drawn to its imposing presence while sensing something troubling in its shadow. The structure has been closed to the public for decades, locked and silent, though it continues to dominate the skyline in its corner of town, a monument to both human ingenuity and the way certain places accumulate weight beyond their physical presence. The canal runs through downtown Derry, a remnant of industrial ambition now mostly forgotten, its waters flowing beneath streets and buildings, occasionally visible where it passes under bridges or through open stretches. Originally engineered in the 1840s to facilitate the timber industry, the canal represents the practical mindset that shaped early Derry, the willingness to redirect water, to dig through earth, to impose human will upon the landscape. Over the decades, as the timber industry declined and the town's economy shifted, the canal became less central to daily life, though the water still flows through its constructed channel, still connects to the larger system of waterways that wind beneath Derry. In some areas, the canal has been covered over, built upon, forgotten by residents who walk above it daily without awareness of the dark water flowing below. But the canal system remains, a hidden network of tunnels and passages, spaces between the world above and the bedrock below. These passages are older than some remember, expanded beyond their original purpose, creating a labyrinth beneath the ordinary streets where few venture and fewer return. 29 Neibolt Street stands on the eastern edge of town, a house that has been abandoned for as long as most residents can remember, though records show families lived there decades ago before something drove them away. The structure itself dates to the early 1900s, a modest two-story dwelling that has fallen into severe disrepair, its paint long since peeled away, its windows broken or boarded, its porch sagging under the weight of neglect. The yard has gone to weeds, creating a barrier of tall grass and invasive plants that seem to warn against approach. Local children dare each other to approach the house, spinning stories about what might live within its walls, though few ever make it past the front gate. The building radiates a quality difficult to name, something beyond ordinary abandonment, a sense that the house itself is watching, waiting. Adults passing on Neibolt Street tend to look away, focusing on the sidewalk or the opposite side of the road, their subconscious minds recognizing something their conscious thoughts refuse to acknowledge. The house has stood empty through multiple cycles, its interior a maze of dark rooms and rotting floorboards, its basement a place of particular darkness that seems to extend deeper than any normal foundation should reach. Derry's history follows a peculiar patterns for those who study the town's records with careful attention. The library contains newspapers dating back to 1839, bound volumes gathering dust in the basement archives, and these papers reveal something troubling when examined across decades. Tragedies occur in Derry with disturbing regularity, events that spike in specific years, creating a rhythm that statistical analysis confirms as beyond normal variation. Approximately every 27 to 30 years, the town experiences a surge in disappearances, accidents, and violent incidents that cannot be explained by ordinary causes. In 1740, an entire group of settlers vanished during winter, leaving no trace beyond their abandoned settlement. In 1770, a series of child disappearances plagued the town for 8 months before stopping as suddenly as they began. In 1851, several loggers were found dead in the woods, their injuries attributed to wild animals, though the evidence suggested something less natural. In 1908, an explosion at the Kitchener Iron Works during a holiday celebration claimed more than 100 lives, an event that stunned the community with its scale and seemed to mark a particularly dark period in the town's history. The pattern continues through the decades with horrifying consistency. In 1930, the Black Spot, a club where Black residents and veterans gathered, was destroyed by fire, an act of hatred that took many lives and represented both human cruelty and something more. In 1957 and 1958, a series of child disappearances gripped Derry, creating a climate of fear that parents still remember in whispered conversations. Then, in 1984 and 1985, the pattern repeated, another cycle beginning with tragedy and escalating through months of unease before subsiding once more. Between these peaks, Derry appears relatively normal, its crime rates and accident statistics comparable to other Maine towns of similar size. But during the active periods, something changes in Derry's atmosphere. A heaviness that settles over the streets, a quality of watchfulness that residents feel without being able to name. The pattern has been documented by those few who notice, though most prefer not to look too closely at what the numbers reveal. Mike Hanlon serves as the librarian at Derry Public Library, a position he has held since the mid-1980s, and in this role he has become the town's unofficial historian, the keeper of memories most residents prefer to forget. Growing up in Derry, Mike developed a fascination with the town's history, particularly the patterns he noticed in old newspaper accounts and public records. His father shared stories passed down through the Black community, stories of the Black Spot and other events that official histories often minimize or omit entirely. This awareness of Derry's hidden depths drove Mike to research more thoroughly, spending hours in the library basement poring over bound newspapers, compiling timelines, mapping the cycles that others deny. He keeps extensive notes in personal journals, documentation of every tragedy, every disappearance, every strange occurrence across 2 centuries. Mike understands that Derry's history is not just a collection of isolated incidents, but something more, a pattern suggesting purpose behind the horror. His research reveals connections that make the rational mind recoil, but Mike persists, driven by the knowledge that understanding might be the first step toward breaking the cycle. The cycle itself operates with a precision that would be impressive if it weren't so terrifying. The periods of activity last approximately 12 to 16 months, beginning gradually with minor incidents that escalate over time, reaching a crescendo before subsiding completely. During active periods, the rate of child disappearances increases by a factor of 6 compared to Derry's baseline, with missing persons reports clustering in specific areas of town. Violent crimes spike as well, particularly crimes that seem to lack rational motive, acts of cruelty that emerge from nowhere and disappear just as suddenly. Accidents occur with improbable frequency, industrial disasters, drownings, structure fires, each incident explainable in isolation, but forming a pattern that defies coincidence when viewed collectively. Then, as the cycle completes, Derry returns to quiet. The violence stops, the disappearances cease, and the town enters a dormant period lasting 2.5 decades. During these dormant years, Derry functions like any other small town, its residents going about their lives, raising children, pursuing careers, generally unaware that they live atop something that sleeps but does not die. What causes this pattern remains unclear even to those few who acknowledge its existence. Some element of Derry itself seems responsible, something woven into the town's foundation, predating the settlement, perhaps predating human presence in this region entirely. The cycles suggest a living pattern, something that feeds and sleeps, that requires sustenance but only periodically, that has learned to pace its appetites across generations. The entity, if entity it is, has existed here far longer than Derry, perhaps arriving in the distant past when the land was wilderness, and the only humans were the native peoples whose stories have been lost. It has witnessed the rise of civilization in this place, adapted to human presence, learned to exploit the fears and weaknesses of each new generation. The 27-year rhythm might relate to some internal need, some biological or supernatural requirement that dictates its periods of activity and dormancy. Or perhaps the pattern is simply habit, a routine established across millennia that continues because it has always continued, because this is how the entity operates in its alien understanding of time and necessity. The thing that dwells beneath Derry has been known by many names across the centuries, though none capture its true nature. Most recently, it has appeared frequently as Pennywise the dancing clown, a figure that should inspire joy, but instead radiates wrongness, a perversion of innocence that makes the mind recoil even as children are initially drawn to the colorful costume and promise of balloons. But the clown is merely one form among countless others, shapes assumed to exploit fear, to draw victims close, to feed on terror as much as flesh. The entity's true form exists beyond normal perception, something vast and incomprehensible that human minds cannot process without damage. Those few who have glimpsed what lies beneath the shapes report seeing lights, dead lights they call them, an orange-red glow that pulses with alien intelligence, that reaches into the mind and destroys sanity, that represents the entity's actual existence beyond all disguise. Understanding what this thing truly is requires accepting concepts that challenge reality itself. acknowledging that the universe contains forces older and stranger than human philosophy has named. The entity came to Earth in the distant past, millions of years before humans evolved, arriving from somewhere beyond the stars, beyond the normal dimensions of space and time. It crashed here like a meteor, though it was not matter in any conventional sense, but something else entirely. Something that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, that perceived reality through senses humans do not possess. It settled into the land that would eventually become Derry, burrowing deep, establishing itself in bedrock and earth, extending its influence through the groundwater and soil, becoming part of the place itself. For eons it slept, occasionally stirring to feed on whatever life existed nearby, primitive creatures in an age before humanity. Then humans arrived. First, the native peoples who learned to fear this place, who told stories of something evil dwelling here, who warned their children to avoid certain areas. These early inhabitants recognized the danger even if they could not name it, sensing the wrongness that permeated the land. When European settlers came, they ignored the warnings, built their town atop the evil, and the entity adapted, learning to exploit these new, more complex minds with their elaborate fears and rich imaginations. Pennywise, the dancing clown, represents the entity's understanding of childhood, a twisted interpretation of what children find entertaining, mixed with an intuitive grasp of what terrifies them. The costume is bright and theatrical, all ruffles and pom-poms and exaggerated features, designed to attract attention and inspire initial trust. But details betray the wrongness beneath the performance. The eyes hold no warmth, only a predatory intelligence studying its prey. The smile stretches too wide, revealing teeth that are too sharp, too numerous. The voice shifts unpredictably between friendly patter and threatening growls. Balloons appear from nowhere, floating against physics, their strings leading down into darkness. The clown can manifest anywhere, appearing in storm drains, in closets, in basements, in the spaces between, always finding the child who is alone, who is vulnerable, who can be frightened most easily. The entity has learned that fear makes its prey taste better, that terror amplifies the experience of feeding, and so Pennywise plays with victims, prolonging their fear before the end comes. But the clown is only one mask among thousands. The entity can assume any form, becoming whatever will frighten a specific individual most effectively. It appears as werewolves to children who fear wolves, as lepers to those disgusted by disease, as dead loved ones to those haunted by loss. It becomes mummies, zombies, characters from horror films, creatures from nightmares specific and personal. The transformations are perfect in detail, incorporating knowledge it should not possess, speaking with voices it should not know, creating terror tailored precisely to each victim's psychology. This shape-shifting ability suggests the entity exists primarily as consciousness rather than fixed form, that its physical manifestation is purely voluntary, chosen from infinite possibilities to serve its purposes. Some encounters suggest it can split itself, appearing to multiple victims simultaneously in different forms, though whether these are separate manifestations or projections remains unclear. What is certain is that the entity understands fear with perfect clarity, knows how to find the deepest terror in any mind, and uses this knowledge with the precision of a surgeon and the cruelty of a sadist. The entity possesses abilities that defy natural law, powers suggesting it operates according to rules different from those governing normal reality. It creates illusions so complete that victims cannot distinguish them from reality. manifesting entire scenarios that exist only in the mind, but feel absolutely real. It demonstrates telepathic abilities, reading thoughts, projecting images directly into consciousness, sometimes communicating without words through pure emotional transmission. Physical laws bend in its presence. It moves through solid matter, appears and disappears without transition, alters its size from tiny to enormous. Water flows upward when it wishes. Lights dim or brighten according to its mood. Electronics malfunction in ways that should be impossible. These violations of physics suggest the entity exists partially outside normal space-time, that it projects itself into our dimension from somewhere else. Somewhere the rules are different. Its lair beneath Derry reflects this otherworldly nature, a space that is simultaneously the town's sewer system and something far stranger. Tunnels that extend beyond physical dimensions into territories that should not exist. Yet, for all its power, the entity operates under limitations, bound by rules it cannot or will not break. It primarily feeds on children, rarely targeting adults, suggesting some requirement or preference that constrains its diet. It seems unable to harm those who do not fear it, or at least finds such victims unpalatable, implying that fear is essential to its feeding process. The entity remains localized to Derry and its immediate surroundings, rarely, if ever, traveling beyond this territory, bound to the place where it first arrived, or perhaps choosing to remain in familiar hunting grounds. It follows the 27-year cycle with remarkable consistency, suggesting this rhythm is not arbitrary but fundamental to its nature, perhaps a biological requirement similar to hibernation in ordinary predators. The entity can be injured, even temporarily defeated, by those who understand its nature and act with sufficient courage and unity. These limitations hint that the entity, despite its alien power, exists as part of a larger cosmic order, subject to laws that apply even to beings from beyond the stars. The deadlights represent the entity's truest form, the reality beneath all masks and shapes, though seeing them destroys human minds with their alien impossibility. They appear as orange-red lights that pulse and swirl, patterns that suggest intelligence and malevolence, a radiance that reaches into the observer's consciousness and pulls it apart. Those who see the deadlights describe the experience as being unmade, pulled into chaos, scattered across dimensions like light through a prism. The lights exist in a space called the deadlights, though whether this is a physical location or a state of being remains unclear. This space connects to everywhere and nowhere, exists outside linear time, occupies dimensions humans can't perceive. Within the deadlights, the entity rests in its natural state, and from this place it projects itself into our reality, manifesting the forms and shapes that humans encounter. The deadlights kill through revelation, through forcing mortal consciousness to perceive what it was never meant to witness, through the simple impossibility of containing such alien awareness in a human brain. Very few have seen the deadlights and retained sanity, and those who have carried the memory like a wound that never fully heals. The entity's relationship with belief and imagination creates both its strength and its vulnerability. It feeds on fear because fear gives it power, makes it more real, more solid, more dangerous. The terror of its victims literally strengthens the entity, allowing it to manifest more fully, to create more elaborate illusions, to exert greater force. This suggests the entity exists partially as a conceptual being, something given form and substance by consciousness observing it. But this dependence on belief works both ways. Just as fear strengthens it, disbelief weakens it. Those who refuse to fear, who deny its power, who maintain conviction in their own reality despite the illusions, can resist and even harm the entity. Children possess this power more naturally than adults because children still believe in the impossible, still understand that what you imagine can be real if you believe hard enough. This is why the entity primarily targets children, but also why children, properly united and sufficiently brave, can defeat it. The battle ultimately occurs in the territory of mind and belief, a contest of wills where imagination becomes weapon and faith becomes armor. Deep beneath Derry, the entity maintains its lair in spaces that defy normal architecture, chambers that are simultaneously the town's old sewer system and something far more vast and alien. The tunnels extend through bedrock in patterns that make no engineering sense, passages that curve through impossible angles, spaces that seem larger inside than outside, corridors that lead to places that exist only in nightmares. The walls weep with moisture that might be water or might be something else. Fluids that carry the stench of decay mixed with odors that have no earthly source. Sound behaves strangely in these passages, echoing in patterns that suggest spaces larger than continents, yet also creating the claustrophobic sense of walls pressing close. Time itself becomes unreliable in the deeper sections, moments stretching into hours or compressed into seconds, creating disorientation that makes escape nearly impossible. At the deepest level rests the entity's physical core, if it possesses such a thing, a presence that permeates the darkness, that watches from every shadow, that waits with infinite patience for prey to wander into its domain. Few who descend into these depths return, and those who do carry memories that haunt them through all their remaining years. The entity's arrival on Earth occurred in prehistory, long before human civilization, though its impact on the land was immediate and profound. When it crashed here, the impact created a crater that eventually filled with groundwater, forming the marshlands that would later be known as the Barrens. The entity burrowed deep, establishing itself miles below the surface, extending its influence through the rock and soil, poisoning the land with its presence. Native peoples who later inhabited this region sensed the wrongness, told stories of an evil spirit dwelling beneath the earth, warned their descendants to avoid certain areas where the evil was strongest. These indigenous inhabitants understood what European settlers would refuse to acknowledge: that some places are fundamentally wrong, that some territories belong to forces humans cannot defeat, only avoid. The warnings went unheeded when colonists arrived, and Derry was built atop the evil, streets laid over poisoned ground, homes constructed above the entity's lair, a town established in defiance of wisdom that could have saved countless lives across the centuries that followed. In the summer of 1957, something stirred in the depths beneath Derry, an ancient rhythm bringing the entity back to awareness after decades of dormant sleep. The signs began subtly, noticed only by those paying attention. Balloons appeared in unexpected places, red balloons drifting against the wind, hovering near storm drains, tied to mailboxes in front of houses where no children had celebrated birthdays. Residents dismissed these oddities, attributing them to pranks or failing to notice them at all. The town's collective tendency toward willful ignorance already operating to protect minds from acknowledging patterns too disturbing to accept. Then the disappearances began in October, starting with a 6-year-old boy named Georgie Denbrough, who went missing on a rainy afternoon while playing with a paper boat his older brother had made for him. Georgie's disappearance would prove to be merely the beginning, the first victim in a cycle that would claim dozens of children before winter came, and the entity returned to sleep, temporarily satiated. Georgie Denbrough's fate on that October day would ripple through Derry for years, particularly affecting his older brother Bill, who would carry the weight of responsibility for what happened. Bill had been sick with the flu when Georgie asked him to play outside, and so Bill made a paper boat instead, showing Georgie how to sail it in the gutter streams created by the rain. The gesture was meant kindly, a way for the older brother to share some fun despite his illness. But it sent Georgie out alone into the afternoon where something waited in a storm drain on Witcham Street. What happened at that drain was glimpsed by no adult, reported by no reliable witness, but Georgie never returned home, and the paper boat was found later, caught against a drainage grate, torn and stained. The loss devastated the Denbrough family. Bill, in particular, was consumed by guilt, feeling responsible for his brother's disappearance despite his young age and the impossibility of his preventing what occurred. This guilt would shape Bill's entire childhood and beyond, driving him to seek answers, to refuse to accept loss, to eventually confront the thing that took his brother, even though that confrontation would nearly cost him everything. As fall turned to winter in 1957, Derry's children continued to vanish, each disappearance following similar patterns. The victims were found alone, separated from groups, vulnerable in their isolation. Witnesses sometimes reported seeing a clown in the area shortly before the disappearance, though descriptions varied, and adults dismissed the reports as children's imagination. The police investigated dutifully but found no leads, no evidence, no patterns they could recognize or pursue. Parents imposed curfews and restrictions, but children still vanished from locked bedrooms, from yards behind fenced houses, from places that should have been safe. By December, 12 children had gone missing, creating a climate of fear that permeated the town even as adults struggled to maintain normalcy. Then winter deepened, snow fell, and the disappearances stopped as suddenly as they had begun. Spring came with no new incidents, and gradually Derry returned to its usual rhythms, the horror of the previous months fading in memory, the pattern repeating once more as the town collectively chose to forget rather than understand. In the summer of 1958, 7 children would come together to form what they called the Losers Club, united initially by their status as outsiders but destined to become something far more significant. Bill Denbrough, still haunted by his brother's disappearance, found himself drawn to others who did not quite fit Derry's social hierarchies. Ben Hanscom, overweight and intelligent, frequently targeted by bullies, possessed a gift for architecture and building that would prove essential. Beverly Marsh, the only girl in the group, endured a difficult home situation, but demonstrated courage that often exceeded that of her male friends. Richie Tozier, motor-mouthed and joking, used humor to deflect from his own fears and insecurities. Eddie Casbrack, small and convinced by his overprotective mother that he was perpetually ill, possessed a resilience that his physical frailty concealed. Stan Uris, methodical and rational, brought order and logic to the group even as they faced the deeply irrational. Mike Hanlon, the only black member, lived on the outskirts of town on his family's farm, providing a perspective on Derry that others lacked. Together, these 7 formed a bond stronger than friendship, a connection that would give them power to face what no adult could acknowledge or defeat. Bill Denbrough emerged as the natural leader of the Losers Club, not through aggression or dominance, but through quiet determination and refusal to give up seeking answers about his brother. Bill struggled with a stutter that worsened under stress, making communication difficult, yet his friends listened to him with patience and respect because they recognized his essential goodness and strength of will. Bill's intelligence manifested in storytelling, creating narratives that his friends loved to hear, tales of adventure and heroism that reflected his own desire to be brave, to face danger, to rescue those who needed help. His guilt over Georgie drove him relentlessly, pushing him to investigate what others dismissed, to pursue answers even when adults told him to stop dwelling on the past. Bill's bicycle, Silver, became a symbol of his determination, the old bike that he rode faster than seemed possible, naming it after the Lone Ranger's horse, embodying his desire to be a hero even if he felt like anything but. The other losers followed Bill not because he demanded it, but because they believed in him, trusted his judgment, and drew courage from his refusal to surrender to fear. Ben Hanscom brought unexpected skills to the Losers Club despite being targeted by bullies for his weight and shy nature. Ben possessed a remarkable gift for building, creating structures from scavenged materials, designing with an intuitive understanding of engineering that would eventually lead him to become an architect in adulthood. In the summer of 1958, Ben designed and largely built the Losers Underground Clubhouse in the Barrens, a remarkable construction with wooden walls, a tin roof camouflaged with earth and vegetation, accessed through a hidden entrance that only the Seven knew. The clubhouse became the Losers' Sanctuary, a place where they could meet without adult supervision or bully interference, where they planned their investigations and found brief respite from Derry's dangers. Ben also harbored a deep, though secret, love for Beverly Marsh, a feeling he expressed through an anonymous poem that would eventually help save her life. His sensitivity and kindness made him a natural target for Henry Bauer's cruelty. Yet, Ben's encounters with the entity only strengthened his resolve to stand with his friends against the evil that haunted their town. Beverly Marsh faced challenges both in her peer group and at home, navigating the difficult terrain of being Derry's girl in a time and place where such status invited both unwanted attention and social isolation. Beverly lived in a difficult household where fear was a constant presence, her father's anger and inappropriate attention creating an environment from which she desperately sought escape. The Losers Club became Beverly's refuge, providing the safety and genuine affection that her home life lacked. Her courage often exceeded that of her male friends, particularly when facing the entity, as Beverly seemed to possess an intuitive understanding of what they fought and how belief could become weapon. Beverly's encounter with the entity in her own bathroom, a terrifying manifestation involving blood and voices that adults could not see or hear, marked one of the first moments when the losers began to understand that they shared an enemy, that what each faced privately was part of a larger pattern. Beverly's strength and loyalty would prove essential to the group's eventual confrontation with the entity, her belief unwavering even in moments when others faltered. Richie Tozier provided levity to the Losers Club with his constant stream of jokes, impressions, and what he called voices, a talent for mimicry that he used to deflect from deeper fears and insecurities. Richie's loud personality concealed a sensitive nature and genuine terror of the entity, which appeared to him as a werewolf, exploiting his fear from horror films he watched despite knowing they gave him nightmares. Richie's intelligence was considerable, though often hidden behind his performative foolishness. his quick mind creating humor even in the darkest moments. His friendship with Bill ran particularly deep, a bond that would persist through decades despite separation and the memory loss that affected all the losers after childhood. Richie's fear of being seen, truly seen beyond the masks he wore, would eventually connect to deeper insecurities about his own identity, though in childhood these remained unexamined, simply driving his need to perform, to make others laugh, to be anything other than vulnerable. His courage when it mattered most proved that humor could coexist with heroism, that laughter in the face of horror was itself a form of resistance. Eddie Kasprak carried the weight of his mother's fears and delusions, raised to believe himself perpetually ill, fragile, dependent on medications and precautions that existed more in his mother's mind than in medical reality. Eddie's mother, Sonia, trapped him in her need to have someone dependent on her, convincing him that he suffered from asthma and other ailments that required her constant supervision. Eddie carried an inhaler everywhere, believing it essential to his survival, though the contents were merely saline water providing psychological comfort rather than medical benefit. Despite this conditioning toward helplessness, Eddie demonstrated remarkable bravery when his friends needed him, pushing past his learned limitations to act courageously. His small stature and genuine kindness made him a target for bullies, but also earned him deep loyalty from the other losers who recognized his essential goodness. Eddie's journey involved gradually understanding that his mother's limitations were not his own, that he was stronger and more capable than he had been taught to believe, a realization that would serve him well in confronting both the entity and the lie of his own weakness. Stan Uris brought order and rationality to the Losers Club, his methodical Jewish faith and love of birdwatching reflecting a mind that sought understanding through pattern and observation. Stan struggled more than any of the others with accepting what they faced, his rational mind recoiling from the impossibility of the entity's existence, the violation of natural law that it represented. Stan's encounters with the entity were particularly traumatic because they shattered his understanding of reality, forced him to acknowledge that the universe was far stranger and more dangerous than his careful worldview had allowed. He saw dead children in the standpipe's reflection, encountered manifestations in the sewer that defied rational explanation, experienced terrors that his mind could barely process. Yet Stan stood with his friends despite his fear, despite every instinct telling him to flee, because loyalty and love ultimately outweighed his need for rational order. Stan's struggle with what they faced foreshadowed difficulties that would emerge decades later when the Seven were called to return. When adult Stan would confront the prospect of facing the entity again and make a devastating choice about what he could and could not endure. Mike Hanlon occupied a unique position among the losers, the only black member in a town where racial tension remained ever present, though rarely acknowledged directly. Mike lived with his parents on a farm on the outskirts of town, a location that provided some distance from Derry's social hierarchies, but also isolation that made him vulnerable to Henry Bauer's racist violence. Mike's father, a thoughtful man who had served in the military, shared with his son stories of the Black Spot and other events in Derry's black community. History that the official town records often minimized or omitted. These stories gave Mike a perspective on Derry's patterns that others lacked, an awareness that the evil they faced had exploited human prejudice and cruelty as readily as it created its own horrors. Mike's encounters with the entity included visions of Derry's past, apocalyptic images of historical tragedies, suggesting that the entity recognized in him someone who might understand its true nature and persistence. Mike would become the group's historian, the one who would stay in Derry as the others left, the keeper of memories and the sentinel who watched for signs that the cycle was beginning again. The losers' first summer together was marked by escalating encounters with both human and supernatural evil, as they faced not only the entity, but also the relentless violence of Henry Bowers and his gang. Henry, himself a victim of his father's brutality and possibly the entity's influence, targeted the losers with particular viciousness, attacks that escalated from verbal harassment to physical violence that nearly claimed lives. A confrontation in the Barrens known later as the Rock Fight became a defining moment. A battle between two groups of children that was simultaneously ridiculous in its childishness and terrifying in its intensity, with rocks becoming weapons and injuries real. The losers prevailed through unity and desperation, but the encounter marked a point of no return, after which Henry's persecution became genuinely murderous. Meanwhile, each loser experienced individual encounters with the entity, manifestations tailored to personal fears, attacks designed to isolate and terrify. Only gradually did they realize that what each faced alone was part of a larger pattern, that they shared an enemy, and that together they might possess a power to resist what none could face alone. The entity attempted to divide the losers through individual attacks, appearing to each in forms specific to their fears, seeking to isolate and destroy them one by one. Bill encountered the clown in his basement, a terrifying confrontation involving old photo albums where images moved and spoke with his dead brother's voice. Beverly faced a manifestation in her bathroom sink, involving blood that only she could see. Voices from the drain promising that her father would do terrible things. Ben met the clown in the library basement after school, a chase through dark aisles that nearly ended in tragedy. Richie saw a werewolf in the drainage canal, a monster that pursued him with murderous intent. Eddie discovered a leper offering disease from the basement of the house on Neibolt Street. Stan saw drowned children in the standpipe's water. Mike experienced visions of historical horrors, massacres from Derry's past playing out like films, projected directly into his consciousness. Each encounter reinforced terror while also providing evidence, proof that something genuine haunted Derry, that their fears reflected real danger rather than imagination. These shared experiences became the foundation for their alliance, the reason they chose to face the entity together rather than remaining isolated victims. The losers discovered that belief itself functioned as weapon against the entity, that imagination given conviction could harm what should be invulnerable. This realization came gradually through their encounters, moments when terror gave way to defiance, when one of them would refuse to accept the entity's power and watch manifestations flicker or weaken. Bill discovered that his father's slides projector could be turned against the entity, not through any mechanical property, but through his belief that it could, his conviction that light could drive back darkness. Beverly found that her slingshot, loaded with a silver bearing, could strike the entity and cause genuine pain. The weapon effective not because silver held magical properties, but because she believed absolutely in her own marksmanship and courage. Eddie's inhaler, filled with nothing but placebo, nevertheless sprayed something the entity recoiled from when Eddie wielded it with total faith in its power. These moments revealed fundamental truth about what they faced, that the entity's existence was bound to belief, that imagination and will could shape reality when conviction was absolute. that children still possessed power that adults had forgotten or surrendered. The knowledge was both empowering and terrifying, because it meant that doubt could doom them while faith might save them. The ritual of chud emerged from Bill's research and Mike's inherited knowledge, an ancient technique for battling entities like the one they faced, though its exact origins remained mysterious. The ritual involved a psychic confrontation, a battle of wills conducted through biting, of all things, a practice that seemed absurd until one understood it as symbolic combat. Imagination made physical through metaphor. To perform the chud, one had to connect mentally with the entity, enter its space while maintaining one's own identity, engage in a contest where the loser would be consumed or destroyed. The technique was dangerous beyond measure because it required opening one's mind to the entity, allowing it access to thoughts and memories while trying to attack it on its own ground. Bill, as the group's leader and the one most driven by need for confrontation, took the lead in attempting the ritual when they finally descended into the entity's lair beneath Derry. The process involved Bill projecting his consciousness into the deadlights, the space where the entity truly existed, while his friends anchored him with their combined belief and love, preventing him from being lost entirely in that alien vastness. In August of 1958, the losers made their first descent into Derry's sewers, following storm drains and service tunnels into the darkness beneath the town, seeking the entity's lair with courage born of desperation and friendship. They entered through the barrens, finding an access point where the Kenduskig connected to the underground system, bringing flashlights and weapons that were more symbolic than practical, carrying belief as their primary defense. The journey into those depths tested each of them, confronting fears both personal and universal as they navigated tunnels that seemed to shift and change, that extended impossibly far, that opened into chambers no city planning had ever authorized. The darkness pressed close, alive with threats both imagined and terrifyingly real. They encountered evidence of the entity's past victims, remnants they tried not to examine too closely, horror upon horror suggesting the scope of suffering across the decades. The sewers echoed with sounds that made no sense, whispers and growls and distant laughter, the entity aware of their presence, playing with them as cat with mice. But the losers pressed forward, driven by Bill's determination and held together by bonds strong enough to resist the isolation the entity sought to impose. In the deepest part of the lair, the losers found something vast and incomprehensible. A space that was simultaneously a physical chamber in Derry's underground and something else entirely. A territory where the entity rested in form, approaching its true nature. The confrontation that followed defied easy description, occurring partially in physical space and partially in the realm of imagination and psychic combat. Bill engaged the entity through the ritual of chud, while his friends supported him with their combined will, their belief in each other, and in their power to resist. The battle raged across multiple levels of reality, manifesting as physical struggle against the entity's various forms, while simultaneously playing out as a contest of minds in spaces beyond normal perception. Beverly struck the entity with her slingshot, a silver bearing finding its mark in the form that manifested before them, driving it back temporarily. Eddie deployed his inhaler, spraying substance that the entity recoiled from, though the canister contained only placebo. Richie, Ben, and Mike fought with improvised weapons empowered by conviction. Stan maintained the mental anchor that prevented Bill from being lost entirely in the deadlights. Together, their combined strength and unified belief wounded the entity, drove it into retreat, forced it back into dormancy. The entity fled deeper into its lair, wounded by what should have been impossible, forced into hibernation earlier than its cycle normally demanded. The losers had not destroyed it, could not destroy something so fundamental and ancient, but they had hurt it badly enough to drive it back to sleep, to end the immediate cycle of disappearances and death. As the entity retreated, the chamber around them began to collapse, tunnels dissolving, reality reasserting itself in ways that nearly trapped them underground. The losers fled through disintegrating passages, running through darkness as walls crumbled and water rose, barely escaping before the entire section of sewer system collapsed behind them. They emerged into daylight in the barrens, soaked and exhausted, traumatized by what they had experienced but alive, victorious in ways they could barely comprehend. They made a pact that day, cutting their palms and joining hands, swearing that if the entity ever returned, if the cycle began again, they would come back to Derry no matter where they were, no matter how much time had passed, and face it again together. Then they went home, and gradually, over months and years, they began to forget. The forgetting was not natural, though it seemed so at the time. As the losers grew into adolescence and then adulthood, memories of that summer faded like dreams upon waking, details becoming vague, events taking on an unreal quality that made them easy to dismiss. By the time they left Derry for college and careers elsewhere, they remembered having been friends in childhood, but little of what they had faced together. Their minds protected them through forgetting, or perhaps the entity's influence extended even into memory, ensuring that those who had harmed it would not retain knowledge of how they had done so. Only Mike Hanlon, who remained in Derry, kept his memories relatively intact, though even he found details shifting and uncertain over time. Mike became the keeper of their shared history, maintaining records, documenting the pattern, watching for signs that the cycle was beginning again. He knew that forgetting was part of the entity's power, that memory loss helped ensure that each generation faced it unprepared, that knowledge gained was knowledge lost across the decades. Derry itself seemed to forget after 1958, the town returning to normalcy with disturbing speed. The disappearances stopped being discussed. Parents who had imposed strict curfews gradually relaxed them. The climate of fear that had gripped the town dissipated like morning fog. By 1960, most residents rarely mentioned the events of 1957 to 58, and by 1965, even those most directly affected spoke of it only in vague terms, if at all. This collective amnesia served the town's need to function, to continue, to avoid confronting truths too disturbing to integrate into daily life. Derry had survived the cycle before and would survive it again. The citizens seemed to believe at some unconscious level, and so better to forget than to dwell on horror that seemed to have passed. New families moved to town, unaware of the patterns. Children grew up hearing whispered rumors about old tragedies, but no clear warnings. Life continued, and beneath the surface the entity slept, healing from its wounds, waiting for the rhythm that would bring it back to awareness once more. The years passed quietly in Derry through the 1960s and 1970s. The town experienced the same cultural shifts that transformed America, though filtered through small-town New England conservatism. The downtown experienced decline as a shopping mall opened on the outskirts, drawing business from Canal Street's traditional stores. The population remained stable, families moving in to replace those who left, the cycle of small-town life continuing without remarkable incident. crime rates stayed average for a town of Derry's size. The school system graduated classes each year. The library maintained its collection. Seasons turned, bringing fall colors and winter snow, spring mud and summer heat. For those who had experienced 1957-58, life moved forward into adulthood and middle age, careers and marriages, children and responsibilities. The 7 who had called themselves losers scattered across the country, pursuing lives that felt disconnected from their Derry childhoods, connected only by the vaguest memories of having once been friends, unaware that their story was not finished. Bill Denbrough became a successful author, writing horror novels that critics praised for their emotional authenticity and understanding of childhood fear. He married an actress, lived in England, achieved the success he had dreamed of as a child telling stories to his friends. Yet, Bill struggled with feeling like an imposter, as if his success belonged to someone else, as if some essential part of himself remained missing despite outward achievement. He experienced writer's block at times, sitting before blank pages with the sense that he had forgotten something crucial, some story he needed to tell but could not quite remember. His stutter, which had plagued him in childhood, diminished in adulthood but never fully disappeared, emerging under stress or emotion. Bill sometimes dreamed of a paper boat sailing down a rainy street, of a brother whose face he could not quite recall, of friendships from childhood that felt important beyond his ability to explain. These dreams troubled him with their intensity and their elusiveness, memories that dissolved when he tried to examine them directly, leaving only unease and the sense of unfinished business. Beverly Marsh moved to Chicago and eventually became a successful fashion designer, escaping Derry and the circumstances of her childhood to build a life that seemed far removed from small-town Maine. She married a man named Tom, who initially appeared charming, but gradually revealed controlling tendencies that echoed her father's behavior, patterns repeating despite her conscious efforts to choose differently. Beverly's childhood memories remained largely inaccessible, a blankness where years should have been, faces she could not quite place, events that felt significant but remained undefined. She sometimes found herself afraid of bathrooms, particularly drains, without understanding why. Red balloons in stores or at birthday parties filled her with inexplicable dread. She retained her courage and core strength, but had lost the context for why those qualities had been necessary, the battles that had forged her resilience into something exceptional. Ben Hanscom became a highly successful architect, designing buildings across the American West, his gift for construction finding full expression in adulthood. He lost the weight that had defined his childhood, transforming into a fit and confident adult, yet never quite shaking the sense of being the fat kid despite what mirrors showed. Ben remembered Derry vaguely, recalled having been unpopular, remembered building something in woods, though details escaped him. He thought occasionally of a girl from childhood whose name he could not remember, a love that had felt profound at the time, though he could not recall her face or why she had mattered so deeply. Sometimes he sketched designs for underground structures, clubhouses and bunkers, without conscious understanding of why such projects interested him. His work took him across the country, but never back to Maine, some unconscious avoidance keeping him distant from the place where he had spent his youth. Richie Tozier found success as a radio personality and comedian, his talent for voices and quick wit translating into a career built on making people laugh. He maintained the performative personality from childhood, always on, always joking, using humor to deflect from deeper feelings and questions he preferred not to examine. Richie lived in Los Angeles, moved through relationships without deep commitment, maintained friendships that remained surface level. He remembered having been class clown in childhood, recalled faces without names, had vague sense of having once had close friends, though he could not quite picture them. Sometimes he experienced panic attacks without clear cause, sudden, overwhelming fear that made no sense given his successful adult life. He avoided thinking about childhood, preferring to focus on the present, yet dreams sometimes brought fragments of memory that disturbed him without explanation. Eddie Kasprak became a limousine company owner in New York, building a successful business through attention to detail and organization that reflected his methodical nature. He married a woman who reminded him uncomfortably of his mother, someone who fussed over his health and tried to make him dependent, patterns repeating though he could not consciously acknowledge the similarities. Eddie still carried an inhaler despite having long since learned that his asthma had been largely psychosomatic, the habit too ingrained to break even with adult understanding. He remembered his mother with mixed feelings, guilty over resenting someone who had claimed to love him, while also recognizing at some level that her love had been possessive and limiting. Childhood memories remained vague. Derry a place he thought of rarely. Friends whose names he could not quite recall, though he sometimes woke with the sense of having dreamed about them. Stan Uris became an accountant, married his college sweetheart, built a comfortable suburban life in Atlanta that reflected his need for order and stability. His love of birdwatching persisted from childhood, providing calm through observation of natural patterns and behaviors that followed predictable rules. Stan's rational worldview remained intact, his faith practiced through tradition and community rather than mystical belief, his life organized according to principles that made sense and could be relied upon. Yet Stan experienced anxiety that seemed disproportionate to circumstances, a fear of disorder and chaos that sometimes manifested as compulsive checking behaviors, ensuring doors were locked, that stoves were off, that everything remained in its proper place. He avoided horror films, disturbed by them in ways he could not articulate. Sometimes he dreamed of impossible things, visions that violated natural law and left him shaken upon waking, though details faded immediately. Mike Hanlon alone remained in Derry, taking over his parents' farm for a time before eventually becoming head librarian at the Derry Public Library. Mike's memories of childhood remained more intact than those of his friends, though even he found certainty elusive when trying to recall specific details of 1958. He continued the research his younger self had begun, documenting Derry's history, maintaining awareness of the patterns, though sometimes he questioned whether the conclusions he had drawn as a child made sense or were merely the elaborate fantasy of an imaginative boy. Mike lived alone, never marrying. His life centered on the library and his research, watching the town move through years and decades while he waited for signs he half-hoped would never come. He kept track of his childhood friends through occasional research, knowing where they lived though never contacting them, understanding at some level that they had made a pact once, though memory of its exact nature remained frustratingly vague. The cycle's rhythm continued undisturbed through the decades, 27 years passing as the entity healed and slept beneath Derry. The town experienced the 1960s and 1970s, cultural changes and generational shifts, new families and departing residents, all the normal fluctuations of small-town existence. But beneath normalcy, the pattern persisted, waiting for its time. In 1984, small signs began to emerge for those paying attention. Balloons appeared in unexpected places, red against autumn leaves, hovering near storm drains. Children reported seeing a clown who told jokes that were not quite funny, whose smile seemed wrong. Parents dismissed these reports as imagination or confusion. Then, in the spring of 1985, disappearances began, following patterns that Mike Hanlon recognized immediately because he had never forgotten to watch for them. The cycle was beginning again, the entity awakening from hibernation. And Mike knew that he needed to call his friends home, to remind them of promises made in childhood, to assemble the losers once more for the confrontation that must come. The first clear signal came with a tragedy that combined human hatred with the entity's return, an event that shook even Derry's capacity for willful blindness. Adrian Mellon and his partner faced violence rooted in prejudice, an attack that occurred near a bridge over the canal, an event that reflected both human cruelty and the entity's presence. The tragedy served multiple purposes in the entity's design, feeding on fear while also demonstrating its return to any who understood the signs. Mike Hanlon, reading newspaper accounts and police reports, recognized the pattern immediately. The details matched too closely the beginnings of previous cycles, the particular nature of the violence, the location near water, the sense of something present beyond what witnesses reported. Mike knew then that his watch had ended, that the time had come to fulfill the promise made 27 years earlier, to bring his friends back to face what they had wounded but not destroyed. Mike began making phone calls, reaching out to the 6 friends who had scattered across the country, people he had not spoken to in decades, connections maintained only through occasional research into their public lives. Each call followed similar pattern, Mike identifying himself, reminding them of Derry in childhood, speaking words that seemed to trigger something dormant in their minds. The responses varied, but shared common elements. Initial confusion gave way to dawning recognition, memories flooding back with the force of revelation. Years of forgetting suddenly reversing as if a dam had broken in their consciousness. The conversations were difficult, painful, bringing back not just memories of friendship, but also trauma they had successfully buried for decades. Mike explained that it was happening again, that children were disappearing, that they had made a promise to return. Each of the others felt the pull of that old vow, the sense of obligation that transcended time and distance, though the prospect of returning to Derry filled them with dread, whose sources they were only beginning to remember. The losers, now middle-aged and successful in their various fields, made plans to return to Derry despite fear and rational arguments against involving themselves in what should be police business or best left forgotten. Bill left London, putting his writing aside to catch flights that would bring him home to face what his adult mind still struggled to fully accept. Beverly made the decision to leave Tom, recognizing in the moment of choosing between her abusive husband and her childhood friends that some patterns must be broken regardless of cost. Ben put his architectural practice on hold, traveling from Nebraska with mixture of dread and strange anticipation. Richie left Los Angeles, joking to his agent about personal business while internally terrified by what he was choosing to face. Eddie told his wife he needed to visit Derry for business reasons, unable to explain the truth he was only beginning to remember. Stan, receiving the call in Atlanta, felt the full weight of what returning meant, the prospect of facing again what had nearly destroyed him as a child, and made a choice that would haunt the remaining losers for the rest of their lives. Stan Uris could not face returning to Derry, could not endure the prospect of confronting again what he had barely survived at age 12. The rational part of Stan's mind that had always struggled with the entity's impossible existence recoiled completely from the thought of facing it again. He understood what his friends did not yet fully remember, that battling the entity meant opening one's mind to something that shattered sanity, that some doors once opened cannot be closed again. On the night of Mike's call, after speaking with his wife, after trying to explain what he could not fully articulate, Stan made the devastating choice not to answer the summons, to spare himself and perhaps his friends the horror of what must come. His absence would be felt profoundly by the other losers, creating a wound in their circle that made the second confrontation even more difficult than it might have been. Stan's decision reflected both the entity's lingering power over them and the genuine trauma that even victory had inflicted. The cost of facing impossible evil that some minds simply could not pay twice. The remaining 6 losers gathered in Derry in early June of 1985, reuniting in a restaurant Mike had chosen for their first meeting in over a quarter century. The reunion was simultaneously joyful and deeply unsettling. Adult faces revealing the children they had been. Memories flooding back with increasing clarity as they sat together. They remembered the summer of 1958, the battles fought, the entity they had wounded. They remembered Stan, too, their 7th member, and learned of his choice with grief made more painful by understanding. The evening brought laughter mixed with tears, nostalgia tempered by growing horror as they discussed what faced them now. Adult responsibilities and achievements seemed less substantial in the face of what they had once done together, what they would need to do again. The bond between them remained despite decades of separation, something fundamental and unbreakable, forged in childhood crucible and waiting dormant until circumstances demanded its activation once more. Derry had changed in the decades since they left, yet remained fundamentally the same. New businesses occupied old locations downtown. The mall on the outskirts had drawn away some commercial activity. Faces had changed, whole generations born and raised since 1958. Yet the losers recognized the essential character beneath surface changes, the quality of light and shadow, the particular atmosphere that marked Derry as different from other New England towns. Walking streets they had bicycled as children, they experienced layered perception, seeing both present reality and remembered past. Ghosts of their younger selves haunting every corner. The Barrens remained wild, though more built up around its edges. The library stood unchanged, still presided over by Mike. The standpipe had been demolished years earlier, though its memory persisted. Niebolt Street still stood, the house at number 29 somehow surviving despite neglect. The town pulled them back into patterns established in childhood, roles they had played, dynamics that reasserted themselves despite adult sophistication and decades of separate experience. Henry Bowers had not escaped Derry's patterns either, his life following trajectory toward darkness that seemed almost inevitable given his childhood circumstances. After the summer of 1958, Henry's persecution of the losers escalated to the point of genuine attempted violence, events that culminated in Henry's incarceration for offenses, including attacks on his own father. He spent the subsequent decades in mental institutions and prisons, his mind damaged by traumas both inflicted and experienced, his hatred for the losers persisting across years like an eternal flame. In 1985, as the entity awakened once more, it reached out to Henry, offering freedom and purpose, transforming him into a tool for revenge against those who had wounded it. Henry escaped from the institution where he was held, driven by the entity's influence and his own festering resentment, becoming a threat that the losers would need to face along with the supernatural evil that had shaped both their lives and his. the adult losers began their investigation by retracing steps from childhood, visiting locations that held significance, seeking to understand both what had changed and what remained constant. They returned to the Barrens, now feeling smaller than memory suggested, though still maintaining its wild character, and found remnants of their old clubhouse, collapsed but recognizable, a testament to Ben's childhood engineering and the permanence of certain places. They drove past the house on Neibold Street, feeling the same dread it had inspired in childhood, recognizing that some structures accumulate darkness across decades. They visited the library where Mike showed them his research, rooms filled with documentation of Derry's cycles, evidence compiled across years of solitary vigilance. Each location triggered deeper memories, details returning like pieces of a puzzle reassembling itself, the full picture of what they had faced and what they must face again becoming clearer and more terrifying as understanding grew. The entity had grown stronger in some ways during its hibernation, healing from wounds inflicted in 1958, while also learning from that encounter, adapting its strategies for any future confrontation. The losers discovered evidence that it had been more active during the dormant years than they had expected, not hunting openly, but exerting subtle influence, shaping events, ensuring that Derry remained fertile ground for its eventual return. The disappearances in 1985 followed similar patterns to those of 1957-58, but with refinements suggesting the entity had remembered them, had prepared for the possibility of their return, had set traps both physical and psychological designed specifically for the 7 who had wounded it. This recognition that they faced an enemy that learned and adapted made the prospect of confrontation more daunting, stripped away any comfort they might have taken from past victory, forced them to acknowledge that the battle ahead would be different and possibly more dangerous than what they had survived in childhood. Beverly experienced a particularly disturbing encounter upon returning to her childhood home, now occupied by strangers but still holding echoes of her difficult past. She convinced the current residents to let her see the apartment where she had lived, and in the bathroom where she had once seen blood invisible to adults, she confronted manifestations that proved the entity remembered her specifically, knew her fears, had been waiting for her return. The Mrs. Kirsch who answered the apartment door initially appeared as an elderly woman, but this disguise dissolved to reveal something ancient and malevolent, the entity taunting Beverly with knowledge of her past, threatening her with visions of her dead friends, testing whether adult skepticism had weakened the belief that had once given her power. Beverly fled the apartment, shaken but also energized by anger, recognizing that fear remained the entity's primary weapon, and that courage, however difficult to summon, remained her primary defense. Bill returned to his childhood home on Witcham Street, the place where Georgie had lived and died, where guilt had shaped Bill's entire existence. Walking through rooms that held too many memories, Bill confronted not only the entity, but also his own unresolved trauma, the weight of responsibility he had carried for decades, the question of whether he could have prevented what happened. The entity appeared in forms designed to exploit this guilt, manifesting as Georgie, speaking with his brother's voice, accusing Bill of failure and abandonment. The psychological warfare was precise and cruel, targeting vulnerabilities that had never fully healed. But Bill's adult understanding, combined with recovered childhood knowledge, allowed him to recognize the manipulation, to acknowledge guilt while refusing to be destroyed by it, to accept that he had been a child unable to prevent tragedy while still being the adult capable of confronting evil now. Eddie's return to his childhood home brought a confrontation with memories of his mother and the lies he had been taught about his own fragility. The house felt smaller than he remembered, oppressive in its ordinariness, each room holding echoes of Sonia Kasbrak's voice, insisting on his weakness, his need for her protection, his inability to survive without constant supervision. Eddie recognized as an adult what he had begun to understand as a child, that his mother's love had been a prison, that care could be a form of control, that some dependencies are manufactured rather than necessary. The entity appeared to exploit these realizations, manifesting forms designed to make Eddie feel weak and helpless, attempting to activate decades of conditioning. But Eddie also remembered his courage in childhood, the moments when he had acted despite fear, and this memory, combined with adult autonomy, gave him strength to resist the entity's psychological attacks and reaffirm his own capability. Ben discovered upon his return that the girl he had loved in childhood, Beverly Marsh, had grown into a woman he still found captivating, despite decades of separation and life experience. The feelings from childhood remained, dormant but not dead, complicated now by adult understanding of relationships and his own insecurities about worthiness. Ben had transformed physically from the overweight child to a fit adult, yet he still carried internal image of the fat, undeserving of love, particularly from someone as remarkable as Beverly. Their reunion was tender and awkward, both recognizing something unfinished between them, a possibility that childhood had contained but adult life might finally allow. This emotional dimension added complexity to their mission, personal stakes beyond simple survival, the possibility of future happiness contingent upon surviving present danger. Ben's love for Beverly, acknowledged now rather than hidden in anonymous poems, gave him additional reason to be brave, to face what terrified him, to believe they could win because losing meant sacrificing not just his life, but also this unexpected second chance. Richie struggled more than the others with accepting what they faced. His adult skepticism and reliance on humor as defense mechanism, making it difficult to fully embrace the impossible reality of the entity. Confronting supernatural evil required believing in things his rational adult mind rejected, setting aside decades of learned cynicism to access the childlike capacity for faith that had given them power before. Richie's encounters with the entity in 1985 forced this confrontation between adult and child perspectives, manifestations that could not be explained away or joked into powerlessness, horror that required acknowledgement rather than deflection. His particular fear involved being truly seen, recognized, known in ways he had spent a lifetime avoiding, and the entity exploited this fear by suggesting it saw him completely, understood what he refused to acknowledge even to himself, would expose him in ways more terrifying than physical destruction. Richie's journey back into belief and courage was perhaps the most difficult of all the losers, requiring him to strip away defensive layers and access vulnerability he had spent decades protecting. Mike, who had never left Derry, served as anchor and guide for the others, providing continuity between past and present, maintaining knowledge they had lost to forgetting. His decades of research had prepared him as much as anyone could be prepared for second confrontation with the entity, though even Mike felt uncertainty about whether childhood victory could be repeated, whether their adult selves possessed the same capacity for belief that had empowered them as children. Mike's burden was unique among the losers because he had borne it alone, watching and waiting through decades while his friends lived normal lives elsewhere, unable to share the truth with anyone who would understand or believe. His isolation had been necessary but painful, a sacrifice he had made to honor their childhood pact, to ensure that someone remembered and watched for signs of the entity's return. Now, with his friends returned and memories restored, Mike felt both relief at no longer being alone and fear that he had called them back to deaths he would be responsible for causing. The cosmic elements underlying the entity's existence became clearer during their adult investigation. Concepts that their childhood minds had grasped intuitively, but which adult research and experience allowed them to articulate more fully. The entity existed as part of a larger multiverse, a reality containing forces and beings beyond human comprehension, where normal physical laws did not apply, and consciousness itself could take forms impossible in our dimension. The entity called It had come from this larger reality, crashing into Earth in prehistory, bringing with it qualities and abilities that violated everything humans understood about the nature of existence. But if it came from somewhere else, the losers reasoned, then perhaps other forces from that same multiverse might exist, entities not necessarily friendly but possibly opposed to it, powers that could be invoked or appealed to in their desperate struggle. This realization led them to research mythology, folklore, and traditions from various cultures that spoke of cosmic battles between opposed forces, seeking any advantage, any knowledge that might tip the balance in their favor. The turtle emerged in their research and recovered memories as a cosmic entity, somehow opposed to, or at least balancing against it. Though the turtle's exact nature and purpose remained mysterious, even to those who had briefly touched its consciousness. Bill remembered from childhood an encounter during the first ritual of Chud, where his mind had been cast out into cosmic spaces and had briefly contacted something ancient and benevolent that had offered guidance and strength. This entity presented itself as a turtle, vast beyond comprehension, described in ways that suggested it had vomited up the universe in a creative act, that it maintained some fundamental role in the structure of reality itself. The turtle had helped Bill in childhood, providing the knowledge and power necessary to wound it, acting as counterbalance to the entity's malevolence. But as Bill reached out in adult ritual to contact the turtle again, seeking the same assistance, he encountered only silence and the terrible realization that the turtle had died, that the cosmic force which had helped them before was no longer available, that they would need to face it without the support that had made childhood victory possible. The revelation of the turtle's death struck the losers with despair, seeming to doom their chances before the final confrontation even began. If the cosmic entity that had aided them was gone, how could they possibly prevail against it when even childhood victory had required assistance from beyond? Mike's research suggested that the turtle's death was recent in cosmic terms, occurring sometime in the decades since 1958, possibly connected to the energy expended helping them, though causality was difficult to determine in matters beyond normal time. The implications were profound and terrifying. Without the turtle's counterbalancing force, it might be unopposed in ways it had not been previously, stronger and more dangerous than before. This knowledge would have broken them completely, except for a deeper realization that came with maturity and desperation. The turtle had helped them, yes, but the actual power that wounded it in 1958 had come from themselves, from their unity and belief, from courage and love stronger than evil. The turtle had been a guide and support, but the weapon had always been their own combined will, their refusal to surrender, their absolute conviction in each other and themselves. The nature of belief as the fundamental force in battling, It became the cornerstone of their strategy for the second confrontation. As adults, they understood more clearly what had been intuitive in childhood, that it existed partially in the territory of imagination and consciousness, that its power was magnified by fear but diminished by conviction, that reality itself could be shaped by absolute belief. This understanding was both empowering and challenging because adult minds, trained in rationality and skepticism, struggled to achieve the pure faith that children accessed naturally. They would need to recover that childlike capacity for belief, to set aside decades of learned cynicism, to embrace the impossible with total conviction. This requirement explained why it primarily targeted children, not only because children tasted better when frightened, but because children possessed natural power that adults had forgotten, the ability to believe absolutely in their own imagination, to make real what they visualized with sufficient conviction. The losers would need to become children again in the ways that mattered, recovering innocence not of experience but of belief. Their preparation for descending into its lair involved more than gathering weapons and planning strategy. It required rebuilding the unity that had given them power in childhood, recovering the absolute trust in each other that had allowed them to function as a single force rather than 6 separate individuals. They spent days together before the final descent, talking through the night, sharing fears and hopes, acknowledging love that had remained unspoken for decades. Bill and Beverly confronted feelings that had existed in childhood but took new form in adult context. Ben revealed to Beverly that he had been the one to send the anonymous poem, a confession decades delayed that brought tears and recognition of possibilities. Eddie confronted the truth about his marriage, seeing clearly how he had recreated his mother's control in adult relationship. Richie allowed himself to be vulnerable, dropping defenses and letting his friends see him truly. These emotional connections were not merely personal, but strategic, each moment of genuine intimacy strengthening the bond that would power their united stand against it. On the night they chose to descend, the losers gathered their symbolic weapons with adult understanding of what they represented. Beverly brought her slingshot, the weapon that had struck it in childhood, knowing that its power came not from the mechanism, but from her belief in her own accuracy and courage. Eddie carried a new inhaler, understanding now that it was placebo, but believing absolutely that his faith in it could make it effective. Bill prepared himself mentally for the ritual of Chud, the psychic battle that would require him to project his consciousness into its true domain, while his friends anchored him with their combined will. Each loser understood that the weapons and tools they carried mattered less than their conviction in them, that the true arsenal they brought into darkness was intangible. Love, friendship, courage, and belief strong enough to reshape reality according to their will rather than its design. The descent into Derry's sewers in 1985 followed the same path they had taken in 1958, but everything felt different through adult eyes. The tunnels seemed smaller, yet somehow more oppressive, the darkness more absolute, the sense of wrongness more pronounced. They moved through passages that shouldn't exist, following routes that violated the city's official sewer maps, descending into depths that exceeded any practical purpose for drainage or maintenance. The entity was aware of their presence immediately, its consciousness permeating the darkness, manifesting forms designed to separate them, to exploit individual fears, to break their unity before they could reach its lair. They encountered manifestations of their dead friend Stan, cruel mockeries suggesting that his choice had been the wise one, that they too should turn back while they still could. They saw visions of their childhood selves, small and vulnerable and doomed. But they pressed forward together, refusing to be separated, maintaining physical contact when possible, reminding each other that what they saw was designed to create fear, that belief in themselves and each other mattered more than any illusion. The lair at the deepest level had changed since childhood, grown or evolved, or simply revealed more of its true nature, a space that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What appeared physically as a chamber within Derry's bedrock was also something else entirely, a territory where it rested in form closer to its authentic existence. The air itself felt wrong, thick with presence that pressed against their minds, invaded their thoughts, sought weaknesses to exploit. The entity manifested before them in its Pennywise form, but the clown seemed merely a projection, a surface beneath which something vast and incomprehensible writhed. The deadlights pulsed behind the clown's eyes, orange-red glow that threatened sanity for any who looked directly into them. The losers formed a circle, holding hands, physical connection reinforcing psychic unity, preparing for the battle that would occur simultaneously in physical space and in the realm of consciousness where the entity truly existed. Bill initiated the ritual of Chud, opening his mind to contact with it, projecting his consciousness into the space where the entity dwelled beyond physical form. The process was even more terrifying in adulthood because he understood more clearly what he risked, how easily he could be lost in that alien vastness, consumed or shattered beyond recovery. Bill felt his friend's presence anchoring him, their combined belief giving him strength as he engaged it in the psychic combat that was the true battle. In that space beyond space, Bill confronted its authentic form, something that language could not describe, vast and malevolent and ancient beyond human comprehension. The battle that followed defied explanation, a contest of wills where thought became weapon, where belief shaped reality, where the strength of one's conviction determined victory or defeat. Bill drew upon every ounce of courage he possessed, channeling not just his own will, but the combined determination of all his friends, their love for each other becoming the power that allowed him to wound what should be invulnerable. While Bill fought the psychic battle, the others engaged its physical manifestations, forms that attacked them in the lair with murderous intent. Beverly's slingshot sang again, silver bearing striking true, finding marks in flesh that should not be vulnerable to such simple weapons, but yielded to her absolute belief in her own skill. Eddie wielded his inhaler like a sacred weapon, spraying substance that it recoiled from, the power emerging not from the device but from Eddie's absolute conviction that he was strong, that he had always been strong, that decades of being taught otherwise had been lies he now rejected completely. Ben fought with improvised weapons and physical courage, protecting Beverly, standing firm when instinct screamed to flee. Richie maintained the mental anchor alongside Mike, their combined will supporting Bill in the psychic space, preventing it from overwhelming his consciousness while he engaged in the ritual of Chud. The battle raged across multiple levels of reality simultaneously, physical struggle mirroring and reinforcing psychic combat, the losers functioning as one entity opposed to the ancient evil. Henry Bowers appeared during the battle, manifesting in the lair like another of its projections, though he was horribly real, driven by the entity's influence and his own festering hatred. Henry had become a broken tool, his sanity shattered by decades of trauma and its manipulation. useful to the entity precisely because his resentment made him eager to destroy the losers regardless of cost. His presence added another dimension of danger, human violence mixing with supernatural horror, requiring the losers to defend themselves on multiple fronts simultaneously. The confrontation with Henry was brief and tragic, a life wasted and ultimately ended by the very evil that had used him. But his attack came at a critical moment when their attention was divided, when any distraction could prove fatal. Eddie, defending his friends against Henry's violence, was badly wounded in the confrontation. Injuries that would ultimately prove mortal despite his courage and the victory they achieved. In the psychic space where the true battle occurred, Bill achieved what had seemed impossible, wounding it so severely that the entity's hold on reality itself began to fail. The process involved more than simple violence. It required Bill to deny its right to exist, to believe so absolutely in the wrongness of its presence that reality itself rejected it. This was the ultimate expression of the power that belief held in combating the entity, the ability to unmake what should not be, to exile from existence what did not belong. Bill's conviction, supported by his friend's unified will, created a cascade where its manifestations began to dissolve. The lair began collapsing, the entity itself retreating not into hibernation, but into something approaching destruction. Whether they actually destroyed something so fundamental and ancient remained uncertain, but they drove it from this reality, severed its connection to Derry, ended the cycle that had claimed lives across centuries. As it died, or fled, or ceased to exist in any meaningful way, the lair collapsed around the losers, tunnels dissolving, impossible spaces contracting back toward normal physics, the entire structure of its domain coming apart. They fled through disintegrating passages, carrying Eddie's dying body, racing ahead of total collapse, barely escaping before the entire section of underground Derry imploded. They emerged into dawn light in the Barrens, exhausted beyond measure, traumatized and victorious and grieving simultaneously. Eddie died in their arms shortly after reaching the surface, his wounds too severe for medical intervention that came too late regardless. His last words were for his friends, acknowledgement of what they had achieved, peace found in knowing his life and death had mattered, that he had been genuinely strong rather than the weak invalid his mother had taught him to believe himself. His loss was profound, a wound in their circle that would never fully heal, but Eddie's sacrifice had been essential to their victory, his courage in the final moments exemplifying everything the losers represented. The aftermath of the battle brought changes both immediate and lasting. Derry itself began to change, though most residents never understood why or even noticed the shift. The downtown area flooded catastrophically when its lair collapsed, portions of the town literally sinking as underground voids created by the entity's presence collapsed inward. The flooding was attributed to natural causes, infrastructure failure combined with spring weather, but those who understood knew it signaled deeper transformation, the town literally reshaping itself after the entity's departure. In the months and years following, Derry's character altered in subtle ways. The climate of willful ignorance began to lift gradually, residents becoming slightly more willing to acknowledge problems, to address issues rather than ignoring them. The cycle of violence and tragedy that had marked the town's history ended definitively. Statistics over subsequent decades showing Derry becoming genuinely normal for the first time in its existence. The evil that had poisoned this place for millions of years was finally gone. The surviving losers dealt with Eddie's loss, and the trauma of what they had experienced in different ways, each processing victory and grief according to their nature. Beverly made the definitive choice to leave her abusive husband, drawing strength from having faced cosmic horror to finally escape human evil, recognizing that if she could defeat an ancient entity, she could certainly leave a man who tried to control her. She and Ben began a relationship built on genuine love and mutual respect, finally allowing feelings from childhood to grow into adult partnership, finding happiness that felt earned through decades of waiting and surviving. Bill returned to his writing with renewed purpose, producing work that critics noted had gained depth and emotional authenticity. His personal demons finally confronted, allowing creativity to flow more genuinely. Richie went back to performing, but with subtle changes in his comedy, less defensive humor, and more genuine connection with audiences. His vulnerability in facing it, translating to greater authenticity in his art. Mike Hanlon, who had watched over Derry for so many years, finally felt free to leave, knowing that his vigil had ended with the entity's destruction. He began making plans to travel, to see the world beyond Derry, to recover the life he had sacrificed to maintain watch over the town. Mike understood that his role had been essential, that without his steadfastness they might never have reassembled in time, that his decades of lonely research and preparation had made victory possible. Now he could release that burden, could acknowledge that some chapters close definitively, that not all stories require endless vigilance. The library would find a new head librarian. His carefully compiled historical research would be preserved for future scholars, and Mike himself could finally step away from the past into whatever future awaited. The memory loss that had affected them after childhood victory did not recur following the second confrontation. Perhaps because they were adults with different cognitive processes, or perhaps because its destruction was more complete than its wounding in 1958, the losers retained full recollection of everything they had experienced. This permanence of memory brought its own challenges, trauma that could not be conveniently forgotten, loss that remained sharp rather than fading mercifully with time. But it also allowed them to maintain connections forged in childhood and reforged in adult battle, friendships that continued rather than dissolving into vague nostalgia. They stayed in touch more regularly than before Mike's call, visiting each other, maintaining bonds that transcended normal adult friendships precisely because they had been tested in ways few people ever experience. Their shared history, acknowledged rather than buried, became the foundation for continuing relationships and source of strength when facing more ordinary life challenges. The question of whether they truly destroyed it or merely drove it away remained open, discussed during their occasional reunions in years following the battle. Bill maintained that they had ended it definitively, that the entity's destruction was complete, that the cycle would never resume. Others were less certain, acknowledging that something so ancient and powerful might not be capable of permanent death, might instead have been exiled to the space it came from, wounded beyond ability to return, but theoretically not destroyed. Mike's final research before leaving Derry suggested that the entity had existed on Earth for so long that its presence had become woven into the land itself, and that its removal would leave scars that might never fully heal. But whether it still existed somewhere in the cosmic vastness or had been unmade completely, all agreed that its connection to Derry was severed, that the town was free, that their purpose had been fulfilled. The uncertainty they could live with. What mattered was that children were safe, that the cycle had ended, that their long journey from childhood promise to adult fulfillment was complete. The cosmic framework underlying everything they had experienced remained largely mysterious even after victory. The turtle was dead. It was destroyed or exiled, but these entities represented merely fragments of a vastly larger reality that human minds could barely conceive. Bill's encounters in the psychic space had revealed glimpses of this larger cosmos, dimensions and forces beyond naming, a multiverse where entities like it and the turtle occupied roles humans could understand only through crude metaphor. The battle for Derry had been simultaneously monumentally significant and cosmically trivial, essential to those affected but barely noticed in the grander scheme of forces and powers that shaped reality itself. This recognition brought a kind of peace, accepting that some questions have no answers, that human understanding reaches limits, that living with mystery is part of existence in a universe far stranger than our philosophies accommodate. The nature of courage emerged as perhaps the most important lesson from everything they had experienced across two battles separated by decades. Courage was not absence of fear, but action despite terror. Not immunity to horror, but refusal to be paralyzed by it. The losers had been afraid every step of the way, in childhood and adulthood. Yet they had acted anyway, supported each other, maintained belief when disbelief would have been easier. Their victory came not from special destiny or supernatural gifts, but from ordinary humans deciding that some evils must be confronted regardless of cost, that friendship and love matter enough to risk everything defending. Eddie's sacrifice exemplified this principle most clearly, a man who had been taught his entire life that he was weak choosing in the final moment to be strong, to defend his friends, to make his life mean something beyond the limitations others had imposed. Every loser had made similar choices in smaller ways, accumulating acts of courage that together defeated what no single person could face. The power of unity, of functioning as 7 individuals so connected that they became one force, had been essential to both victories against it. Alone, each loser would have been vulnerable, easily isolated, and destroyed. Together, their combined will exceeded the sum of individual strength, creating something that could wound the invulnerable, stand against the overwhelming, maintain belief when reality itself argued for surrender. This unity was built on genuine love, not romantic necessarily, but the profound caring that comes from shared experience, from knowing someone's deepest fears and standing with them anyway, from trusting absolutely that the others will not abandon you when darkness closes in. The loser's circle, even broken by Stan's absence and later by Eddie's death, remained powerful because the bond itself transcended individual members, becoming something larger and more enduring than any person. The legacy of Derry's dark history would persist in subtle ways even after its destruction. The town carrying scars from centuries of horror that could not be immediately erased. Buildings held memories of events that occurred within them. Families carried trauma across generations without necessarily understanding its source. The collective tendency toward willful blindness, learned across decades as survival mechanism, would take years to fully dissipate. But change was possible now in ways it had never been before. Without its influence poisoning the town, without the cycle of horror waiting to resume, Derry could finally become what it had never been. A genuinely normal place where people lived ordinary lives unmarked by supernatural evil. The transformation would be gradual, measured in generations rather than years, but it had begun, and those who understood could take satisfaction in knowing they had given Derry and its future residents a gift beyond price. Freedom from ancient evil, chance at normal existence, possibility of future unburdened by horrific past. For the adult losers, returning to their lives after Derry felt both strange and liberating, carrying memories of horror but also of triumph, burdened by loss but empowered by proven capability. They had faced the worst that existence could manifest and prevailed, paid terrible cost, but achieved victory worth that price. This knowledge shaped how they approached remaining years, providing perspective that ordinary life challenges could not match the existential battle they had survived. Small problems became manageable. Minor setbacks lost power to devastate. Daily frustrations revealed themselves as trivial compared to what they had endured. At the same time, they emerged with deeper appreciation for ordinary joys, the simple pleasures of life unmarked by cosmic horror, the gift of days that pass without having to confront ancient evil. They lived more fully having faced death, loved more openly having lost friends, appreciated connection more deeply, having experienced how rare and precious true friendship proves. Bill and Audra, his wife, found their marriage strengthened rather than destroyed by his Derry experience. Audra's willingness to accept what Bill had faced without demanding rational explanation, creating intimacy that many couples never achieve. Bill's writing evolved, gaining dimensions that critics noticed but could not quite articulate. Depth born of having confronted and survived genuine horror rather than simply imagining it. His stutter, which had plagued him in childhood and returned under the stress of facing it, diminished again but never fully disappeared. A permanent reminder of where he came from and what he had endured. Bill made peace with his brother's death finally, not through forgetting but through accepting that some losses cannot be prevented, that guilt serves no purpose when responsibility lies elsewhere, that Georgie would want him to live fully rather than remaining paralyzed by past tragedy. Beverly and Ben built a life together that reflected everything they had learned about love and courage, partnership based on genuine respect and shared experience of facing impossible odds together. They married within a year of leaving Derry, neither wanting to waste time after having waited decades already. Beverly's design career flourished as she channeled creativity previously blocked by abusive relationship and unresolved trauma. Ben continued his architectural practice with renewed passion, occasionally designing structures that incorporated elements from that old clubhouse in the Barrens, paying tribute to childhood without being imprisoned by past. They spoke openly about Derry and what they had faced, refusing to let trauma remain hidden, finding that acknowledgement reduced its power rather than increasing it. Their happiness felt earned rather than accidental, reward for surviving and choosing not to let horror define them negatively. Richie's career continued successfully, though he made subtle changes reflecting growth from Derry experience. He maintained the comedy, but allowed more genuine emotion to enter his performances, vulnerability that audiences responded to even if they didn't know its source. Richie stayed close with Bill, their friendship deepening in adulthood as they made effort to maintain connection that childhood had created and adult experience had reforged. He visited Derry once more, years after the battle, standing at Eddie's grave with flowers and tears, finally allowing himself to fully grieve rather than deflecting through humor. That visit brought closure, permission to move forward while honoring what had been lost, acceptance that some wounds scar rather than healing completely, but that scarred tissue can still be functional, still support living fully. Mike Hanlon traveled extensively after leaving Derry, finally seeing the world he had sacrificed to watch over one small Maine town. He visited his childhood friends in their scattered locations, maintaining connections and sharing perspectives that helped all of them process what they had experienced. Mike wrote a book eventually, not about it directly, but about Derry's history, a scholarly work that hinted at patterns without explicitly acknowledging supernatural causes, his way of documenting truth while protecting those who would not believe or would be harmed by knowing. He never married, finding fulfillment in friendships and experiences rather than conventional domestic life, his path different but no less valid than those his friends chose. Mike's peace came from knowing his vigil had mattered, that his sacrifice of normal life had served essential purpose, that he had kept faith with promises made in childhood, even when doing so cost him decades of potential experiences. The house on Neibolt Street was finally demolished a few years after its destruction. The structure somehow freed to collapse once the entity that had used it no longer existed to maintain its impossible persistence. Residents noticed that the site, once it was cleared, seemed less oppressive, the land itself appearing to breathe easier without that architecture of horror occupying it. A small park was eventually built on the location, playground equipment and benches creating space for children to play where something evil had once dwelt. The transformation felt symbolic to those who knew the truth, evidence that evil's grasp can be broken, that places can be reclaimed, that light can fill spaces previously given to darkness. Parents brought children to play there without knowing the site's history, innocence occupying ground where horror had reigned, the cycle of life continuing in defiance of past death. The standpipe, long since demolished, existed only in memory and photographs, but its absence felt less significant after its destruction, as if the structure had been held in place partially by the entity's influence and could finally be allowed to pass into history once that influence ended. Other locations around Derry gradually lost the quality of wrongness that had marked them, the barrens becoming simply wild land rather than territory holding menace, the downtown losing the oppressive atmosphere that residents had attributed to economic decline but which had deeper sources. Derry transformed slowly but genuinely into a place where the past, while remembered, no longer poisoned the present, where history could be acknowledged without dooming the future. The story of the Losers Club and their battle against it became, for those who knew it, a testament to several profound truths about existence in a universe stranger than most acknowledge. Evil exists in forms beyond human understanding, ancient and powerful and malevolent. But love and friendship and courage exist too, forces that, while perhaps not cosmic in origin, prove capable of standing against cosmic horror. Children possess powers that adults forget, belief and imagination that can shape reality when wielded with sufficient conviction. Unity creates strength beyond individual capability, making possible what alone would be impossible. Memory matters, both keeping and honoring truth rather than surrendering to convenient forgetting. Sacrifice proves necessary sometimes, costs that must be paid for victory, losses that cannot be avoided but can be made meaningful through what they achieve. And finally, that ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances can find within themselves capacity for heroism they never knew they possessed. Courage that emerges not from absence of fear, but from commitment to something larger than self. Years after the battle, when the surviving losers gathered for reunions or spoke during phone calls, they sometimes discussed whether their story held lessons applicable to more ordinary life challenges. They concluded that everything they had learned facing it translated directly to confronting more mundane evils and difficulties. Stand with those you love rather than facing problems alone. Believe in yourself even when circumstances argue for surrender. Maintain courage even in the face of overwhelming odds. Remember that fear is normal but need not be paralyzing. Honor those lost by living fully rather than being trapped by grief. Recognize that some battles must be fought regardless of cost, because not fighting would cost more. These principles, learned in the crucible of cosmic horror, served them well in navigating the complexities of ordinary adult existence, proving that wisdom gained in extreme circumstances applies universally. The Kentuskiag River continues to flow through Derry, carrying water from the northern wilderness down through the barrens and into the heart of town. Its ancient song unchanged by the human dramas that have played out along its banks. The river witnessed everything that happened in Derry across centuries, saw the entity arrive in prehistory, observed the founding of the town and all the cycles of horror that followed, was present when children finally ended what should have been eternal. Now the river flows through a town gradually healing, water washing away the metaphorical stains of past evil. The current carrying Derry forward into future possibilities unmarked by ancient horror. On summer evenings, children play along its banks much as the losers did decades ago, building dams and exploring hidden spaces, their laughter filling air where screams once echoed, their innocence genuine rather than fragile, protected now by sacrifice they will never know about from evil they will never face. The library, where Mike worked for so many years, maintains its collection of historical documents, the bound newspapers and records that tell Derry's story for those willing to read carefully and see patterns beneath surface events. Mike's research remains accessible to future historians, documentation of cycles and tragedies, though without his explanatory notes, the significance might be missed by less knowing eyes. The building itself, with its stone lions and high windows, stands as testimony to Derry's better impulses, civic pride and pursuit of knowledge, community commitment to education and memory. Future librarians will continue Mike's work of preservation and service, unaware that they serve in a building where truth was kept alive through dark years, where one man's dedication made possible the defeat of ancient evil. In the decades following its destruction, Derry's children grew up unmarked by the entity's influence, living ordinary lives that their parents' generation never experienced. They complained about normal small-town boredom, dreamed of escape to larger cities, faced typical adolescent challenges without the overlay of supernatural horror. This normalcy, so mundane to those experiencing it, represented victory beyond measure to those who understood what it replaced. Every child who grew safely to adulthood, every teenager who left Derry for college and returned for holidays without encountering cosmic evil, every generation that lived full lives unmarked by the cycle, vindicated the loser's sacrifice and courage. The future they had fought for was this: ordinary existence, normal problems, life uncomplicated by ancient malevolence. Not every story needed to be epic. Sometimes the greatest victory was achieving mundane normalcy. The nature of evil itself, as revealed through its existence and eventual defeat, proved both more terrifying and more vulnerable than most philosophies acknowledged. Evil could be ancient, powerful, incomprehensible, operating according to rules that violated human understanding of reality. Yet evil could also be defeated by ordinary people armed with nothing but courage and love, and stubborn refusal to surrender. The cosmic and the personal intersected in Derry, vast forces finding themselves opposed by small-town children whose power derived from friendship and belief. This intersection suggested that the universe, for all its strangeness and horror, might ultimately favor courage over fear, unity over isolation, love over hate. Not through divine intervention or karmic justice, but through the simple principle that those who stand together and refuse to yield possess power exceeding what seems possible when judged by individual limitations. The loser's story became something they rarely spoke of except among themselves, knowing that sharing it fully would invite disbelief or worse, pity for delusions. They had lived through something that most people would categorize as impossible, survived horrors that rational minds rejected, paid costs that seemed disproportionate by normal standards. Yet they would not trade their experiences despite the trauma, because those experiences had given them perspective and depth, forged bonds that transcended normal relationships, taught lessons that served them throughout remaining years. They had been chosen by circumstance rather than destiny, drawn together by being outsiders, and by having been born in the right place and time to face what needed facing. They had risen to meet challenges far exceeding what should be asked of children or adults, and they had prevailed through nothing more magical than friendship, courage, and love. As the sun sets over Derry on a quiet evening, the town appears peaceful and ordinary, its dark history visible only to those who know where to look and what they are seeing. The standpipe is gone, the house on Neibold Street demolished, the sewers cleansed of what once dwelt in their depths. Children play in the barrens, laughter echoing where fear once reigned. The Kenduskig flows toward the sea, its waters carrying stories that will never be told, mysteries that will remain mysteries, secrets held in the current's quiet song. The entity that shaped this place across eons is gone, defeated by 7 ordinary people who chose to be extraordinary when circumstances demanded it. The cycle is broken, the pattern ended, the ancient evil exiled or destroyed. Derry can finally be what it never was before. Just a town, just a place where people live their lives, just ordinary. And in that ordinariness, find the peace that only freedom from cosmic horror can provide.